Welcome back to MCM Collective's Rocky Mountain Residential Podcast. I'm Christine Cavalier.
I'm Blake McBartlett.
I'm Kelly McBartlett.
So, how are you guys doing?
Pretty good. It's Monday.
Yeah, it's Monday. It's fall officially.
I love the fall. I absolutely love the fall.
Especially when we've had like 90-degree days since May? Well,
Yeah.
It seems like.
Get ready for Friday.
Yeah, I know. It's going to get hot again. That's how it always is in the Rocky Mountain area, right? We always get teased by fall, and then summer comes roaring back. So,
It's true.
but it's all good. So today I thought one of the things we could talk about was the global economy, how interest rates play into that, and how all that affects real estate on a global market.
Yeah, that's a really good topic. It's interesting to watch around the globe as different policies create different outcomes. Like, for instance, I think of China, who has had this free market approach to real estate over the decades, but has also invested a ton in construction from a policy standpoint. And so now they have this huge oversupply of houses, which has crashed the real estate market. And, that's really affected us here in the States a little bit because we've had a lot of foreign investment from Chinese investors over the past decade or so. And now in the last 24 months, with their real estate market kind of falling, we've seen a big pullback from Chinese investors. So it certainly has impacted us.
Yeah. So how do you think that plays out in not only in their country, but in our country as well, with interest rates now starting to come down? Do you think the interest rates impacted that at all? And what impact do you think that will have going forward?
Yeah, it's an interesting question for sure. I would guess that, just as our investors and our home buyers are going to start becoming more active in our real estate market, I suspect we'll start seeing more Chinese and foreign investment into our country as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, very good. Do you think their market's going to change at all? Because I know it was interesting you said that their market has really crashed in the last 24 months. So do you think there's going to be any change within their market? How do you see that playing out?
Yeah, I would suspect so. I mean, I think that the government, from all the articles I've been reading, is really watching that, meaning the Chinese government.
Yeah.
To try to stabilize their market. They're starting to offer some more incentives for buyers to get back out into the market, both from an individual purchasing standpoint and also investor. But who knows? I mean, markets are as they are. So
Yeah.
It's a little tennis match. Boom, boom, boom. So I have a question about U.S. investment in foreign countries. So we have a lot of people in our community who actually have homes outside of Cabo or on Sayulita, Puerto Vallarta.
Yeah.
There's a lot of California developers moving into Mexico, but homeownership looks a little different there, especially for foreign investment.
Yeah, it does. And as far as every country's a little different in terms of who can own real estate and what their policies direct. The United States allows for direct phone ownership of real estate, but a lot of countries don't. For instance, in Mexico, you have to work through a third-party entity to own real estate there. So there's, shell companies and lawyers that help you do this. But you're right. There is a lot of development happening in Mexico to attract American buyers. So it's really.
And Canada has put a lot of stipulations in recently in terms of to reduce foreign immigration. In terms of home ownership to help reduce housing costs, Canada has put in some stipulations in terms of who can buy and when you can buy as well.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see how that impacts their market because, as we know, supply and demand is really what causes prices to rise or fall. And so in a country like Canada that has put some limitations on who can buy property, I would expect that will stabilize their prices, right? So it is an interesting philosophy to follow and to see how different countries try and impact the pricing of real estate, either to help real estate appreciate quickly or to stabilize pricing. It's very interesting to see how that governmental policy plays out with how the real estate market does, right?
Yeah, we're even seeing that right now in our country with, the Fed recently reducing interest rates. we've seen a huge impact on the campaign over the last couple of years to increase interest rates, where our real estate market is, down by transaction volume 30% across the nation versus last year. So now it's on the downturn. What do you all think is going to happen with that?
I think it's a give and take. If you pull the string, this happens. I think the year before, when rates were really low, I think we saw in our markets like 15 to 17% appreciation.
Right.
And like, that's just not sustainable.
Right.
So like, what really is a balanced market? What's best for investment? What's best for affordability? Like, it really is a balance game.
Yeah. And, it's more than just even the interest rates playing into the cost of housing. With the great amount of inflation that we've seen over the past couple of years, coupled with the supply chain issues that we had from the pandemic, material costs really skyrocketed, right? And then with the tight labor market in conjunction with that, building houses got very expensive. So it's not just, there's so many factors that play into it, right? Not just supply and demand, but what is it going to cost to build a new home? And so when we get a lot more inventory, or where we look to see more inventory, we'll often look towards those national builders to build more housing stock so that we can increase the supply side to help stabilize prices. However, when it's so expensive to build, that plays into that a lot.
I've gotten a lot of questions over the last couple of years as interest rates have gone up and, transaction volume is down. A lot of people are expecting prices for homes are going to go down at the same time. And it's been interesting to watch. I think we know this with all of the stats that we track, but we've seen prices continue to rise across the nation. So, I think this last quarter, prices were up about 5% across the nation. Our local area has seen appreciation around 4 or 5% similarly. So, and you wouldn't think that that would be the case. But you all know this. I'm sure you do. They're saying that the national supply of homes is down 5 million units versus what we really need in the country to support our population. Right. So it's really what's keeping it low. So.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the decrease in interest rates impacts our housing pricing here. My best guess would be that our housing prices will stay very stable and solid and probably start to appreciate again because more buyers will come into the market, right? And so when we have more demand, we typically see prices go up. So I agree with that. So speaking about demand, what have you guys noticed with how people are moving within our own country and people moving out of the country? You mentioned a little bit about people purchasing elsewhere, like Mexico. What are you seeing as far as trends go with movement within our regions, within our country, within the global setting? How do you think that's playing out with the way that the economy's been and how various factors are impacting that?
I think going back to the pandemic, we started to see a lot of migration patterns that, for various reasons, things like remote work were impacting migration, where we were seeing people move in this nation away from big cities to more enjoyable areas to live. Colorado benefited from that a lot.
Right.
We saw a lot of people move in. There's also been a lot of folks, for the same reason, with remote work policies that have moved to places like Portugal or Central or South America. Some of that's returning, where companies are saying you need to be back in the office, right? But I don't know if that's a trend that's ever going to go away. I also saw a statistic the other day that 31% of realtors reported working with a client in the last year that moved based on politics, which I've never seen that sort of stat before. But it's something that we've seen where we've helped buyers move or sell based on politics. And I'm curious do you think that trend is going to continue? What do you think, Blake?
I think there's always going to be some movement based on people's beliefs and what they feel is important to them based on the demographics and their policy reviews. I was thinking one thing about like in terms of like migration, in terms of like local and globally, home needs have really shifted. I feel like during the pandemic, we saw a lot of people scaling up in terms of sizing, like needing second offices, needing a kid space for school, homeschool.
Right.
And I feel like the builders really responded to that. I feel like now that affordability is becoming more of a concentration, we're starting to see a lot of the national builders building smaller homes.
Right.
And increasing density just to help sustain some of these prices. And I feel like this last 2 weeks working with people from like the Midwest or East Coast coming here, the inventory and the homes are a lot different in terms of needs. And
What do you think those differences are? Like what differences did your clients mention that they thought were so, variated?
yeah, so they came from a place that's like little sprawling, bigger communities, and they were surprised about how many homes are 2 stories
Okay.
in terms of
Yeah.
like density, and talking about like how we develop in our community in terms of like big master plan communities, how the city's requiring like higher density for areas, and how
Right.
developers are getting around like single family homes versus multifamily, and what our newer communities are kind of developed as.
I also think you mentioned something about, the homes expanded a lot during the pandemic for needs and are kind of contracting now for affordability. I was working with clients this last week where they both still had a need for 2 offices because they both work from home. The particular floor plan didn't have a specific second office, but there was a flex space interestingly built behind a staircase. So the builder kind of moved the staircase out a little bit, and there's about 5 feet behind the staircase that could be used for either like a wet bar, or in their case, they plan to use it as an office. And it made me think, for all of our resale buyers or people moving in here that would not be looking for new construction, there's probably a lot of flex spaces in existing floor plans where you can squeeze out an additional office if need be.
Yeah.
Or,
It's funny that you bring that up, because I just met with a client last week, and he converted an area similar to that behind a stairwell. That was really meant to be just kind of an extra storage space, but he finished it out, put air in there, and that's he put a faux window, which is really kind of cool. He showed it to me. It's like has scenery and lighting behind it. It lights up to follow natural daylight,
cool.
Which was really cool, right? So getting really creative with those, like you said, Kelly, those flex spaces to meet whatever needs current buyers are looking for, or current homeowners are looking for that matter, right? Like, I think oftentimes we get stuck in our minds about exactly how certain spaces are supposed to be used based off of what the builder deemed them as. I know in our house, we use our formal dining room as our office. So we don't have a need for a formal dining room. So we convert that to our office space. So I think that is really smart. And, if a homeowner isn't that creative, what sort of resources do they have to maybe help them look at better space planning in their home to meet their needs?
Well, that's a good question, Christine. And I think it's interesting because it seems like the average home buyer or owner feels kind of overwhelmed with what it might take to convert a space or look at spaces in a different way. Frankly, it's usually not as expensive as people think it's going to be.
Right.
And there are a lot of resources out there with either interior designers or architects that could help at a very low cost. I mean, it's not nearly as expensive as you think it would be.
Yeah.
Or your real estate agent.
Right. Yeah. We do that a lot, right? We go into homes, especially when we're getting ready to list them, and help people reimagine what the home could be for those new buyers. So we often encourage our clients when they're pondering any sort of change to their home, whether that be just from a decoration perspective or a functionality perspective, to reach out to us because we do see so many things, right? We keep up with the current trends. We see a lot of different new technology that can be used in a home and various trends for sure. So definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. One other topic that I think of when I think about remote work is, I don't know if you two are experiencing this yet, but I've had some buyers now that they moved for remote work during the pandemic, and now they're kind of moving on to their second city for remote work, and starting to look for things differently than they did the first time around. So they might have gone to an area that was very remote, very different than what they were looking for originally, because they wanted access to recreation, but they didn't consider potentially access to amenities and, like city life and things like that. And so I think, when I think about this, as buyers are starting to look at maybe their second remote work city, it's important to factor in a whole bunch of different things beyond just, how you enjoy life outside of work. So you need to be thinking about access to grocery stores, medical. How does that particular city fare over time in terms of appreciation? Is the city friendly, and are they welcome to outsiders? There's a whole bunch of factors that I think people didn't think about the first time around.
Yeah. I think that's why people are drawn to Northern Colorado, like Boulder, Longmont, Fort Collins, Loveland, because you do have access to all of those things, close to DIA, from the communities. And there's a lot of national headlines right now saying like metropolitan areas, like inventory is very high. And I think in our area, like the Denver metro market, their inventory has increased substantially more than these like so-called commuter cities, or like the Northern Front Range is not experiencing as much of an influx of inventory. I mean, inventory is up all across the nation, especially in our area, but Denver is significantly higher than the communities I just named.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's interesting to see.
Yeah, it is. And that's true of a lot of cities across the nation. Yeah, you're exactly right. Yeah.
So I want to kind of go back to that global viewpoint again. What are you noticing around the world in the luxury market?
It's super interesting. What I've kind of been looking at in terms of data, the luxury real estate market has appreciated faster than any other market across the globe in the past couple years, past 5 years, but especially in the past 1 or 2 years. And that's different than people were expecting. But as, economies have been unstable, and stock markets have been unstable, it seems like folks in the luxury and ultra luxury section are really looking to invest in real estate to kind of stabilize their assets and spread their wealth around. We've seen record sales of properties across the nation, like more $50 million properties has been sold this past year than have ever sold before.
Yeah.
So it's super interesting to see that happening right now. At the same time, while other markets, lower end markets, maybe aren't seeing as many transactions. So, what else are you guys seeing?
I was surprised. We look at the monthly data every month, and average days on market was really surprising. I think this time last year, Boulder, there was 2 homes that were $11 million sold same week. They're private listings, but both sold within a week. And I was shocked. But the average days on market, like the 450 to 500 or 550 market, was like 90 days.
Yeah.
In some of those like micro markets. So things move. It's just.
Why do you guys think that is? I mean, what are your speculations for why the luxury market is doing so well?
Gosh, I mean, I think there's some data that has said that inflation has helped the more luxury homeowner. They've had better returns on their investments. They've had increases in profitability on their businesses, and so I think they're looking to invest in different places. And also just going back to, real estate is a very stable asset. It's a great place to hold money. And so, when you're looking to kind of stabilize your whole portfolio, real estate is a great place for that to be. Yeah.
They're cash buyers. Both those two I mentioned in Boulder were cash buyers. Yeah. And I think one thing about our area, people want to be here. People love living in our area. And we're always looking at like national trends compared to like our local markets. I always say we kind of live in a bubble. And national trends sometimes don't follow our markets just because people choose to be here and they want to be here. I mean, along the Front Range, we have 4 or 5 major universities, big healthcare systems, really diverse in terms of age, activities, price points.
And also really diverse as far as our economy goes. I mean, I know a lot of areas around the country and even around the globe, you get into a specific area and it's very dependent upon a certain sector of the economy. And I think that's one thing that has always helped the Front Range is that we have such a diversity in our economy. We have many, many industries that thrive here. And so if one industry is doing not as well, typically another industry in our area does better. Actually, like we have tech, a lot of tech, we have biotech, we have healthcare, like you said. We also have oil and gas. And so those things all balance each other out. So we typically don't see those kind of downturns in the economy here compared to like other areas around the globe.
Yeah, it's probably why in Larimer County, the average price point on a luxury listing was up 30% this year versus last year, while the regular market was up about 4 or 5%.
Yeah. Very good. All right. Well, thanks for joining us once again. MCM Collective, Rocky Mountain Residential Podcast. See you next time.